Hello, everybody. It's Joey with Funk Flow Training, and welcome to another installment of the Next Step interviews. This is where we interview awesome people doing really interesting things, and I ask them how can they see people taking the next steps in whatever area they are an expert in. And normally we do these at 9:30 in the morning on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, but today is a special 11 o'clock Wednesday version. And today I am talking to Carolyn Flower, who is an expert in answering that question, how do I get a book published? How do I write a book? I'm sure you and me, like all of us, we have those ideas like, oh, I can write that novel, or I can write that, really great self-help book, or that really great children's story, or whatever that book is for you. You thought about it, and you probably thought about it, maybe even written a few pages or got started, but then a lot of people stop. And Carolyn is an expert at helping people move past that idea stage, that stop stage, to actually writing it, getting committed, working through the process, and then having that book in your hand. And so I'm super, super excited to have her here. Miss Carolyn, how are you?
I'm great. I'm grateful, always grateful. And thank you for having me on here. I love it. Thanks so much. I love what you're doing, and I appreciate the time.
Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time. And so tell us a little bit how you got started. I know you're an author and you're a columnist. How did you get started from moving from, creating books to developing this training program?
Well, my business has been around for about 25 years. It has been a traditional business until I moved it into the online space in 2015. I was learning from some really terrific ideas, and I understood very quickly that my traditional business needed to move forward. And just prior to that time, I experienced a loss in my family, and it required me to take some time to look after another family member, pretty much full time. So I've been a writer since I was a kid, and I write for a living. And as I was taking some time away, I decided to write a book. It wasn't actually the book I originally thought I was going to write, which we can talk about because those kind of things happen. But intuitively, I started to write gratitude every day in 2014, every single day. And in 2015, I developed a concept for a book, and I published a book, which became a bestseller. And in the process of writing the book, I experienced a feeling that I think a lot of writers feel when they put their mind to or decide that they want to write that book. Because I felt very solitary in that experience. I really felt as if I needed a lot more support. And I had so many questions. And that gets in the way a lot. And I was in the industry and I still had the questions. And I had a team of designers in my own firm and I still had the questions. So I decided to develop a self-publishing division of my company that could address a lot of those things where authors decided they want to write books and then they got to a point where they just didn't continue the process. So how could we be of service? How could we help with that? And for a lot of writers, as you and I have talked about, they get to a point where they know they want to write the book, but they can't figure out what's holding them back. And a lot of the time it's because they haven't really made that decision yet. They haven't decided really to write that book. And so I work with them in a couple of different processes to get them through that initial stage and make that commitment. And then we do everything to help them go from that initial commitment through the writing and the design and the promotion, and then essentially delivering to them the reality of becoming published authors. It's a really exciting process.
Awesome. What would you say the biggest thing is for people to go from the idea to the commitment stage? What is that thing that you see that helps people, they go over that gap? Because I'm sure that must be a big gap for a lot of people.
It is. It absolutely is. I ask every author the same question when we begin. We talk about their book idea. Some people know exactly what they want to write. Some people think they know what they want to write. And through the process, it actually turns out to be something more as what it's supposed to be, but they just didn't know it at the time. But I always ask them the same question. What's your why? Why do you want to write the book? When we tend to look at ourselves and we say, I want to write the book because I'm just writing a book and it's really just for me. If you look beyond that and you look at the reason why you're writing the book, for the much greater, bigger reason. I have so much wisdom and knowledge in 30 years of business. I want to share that. I want to teach other people not to, the pitfalls of what I went through so that they won't. I've been through life experiences and traumas, and I want to help other people through there. So how can I be of service to other people when it comes to nonfiction books? And then with fiction books, how can I take my imagination and captivate a reader? So it's discovering why. And when you really plug into the why, because the how part is where people get stuck. They say, well, I don't know how, or I don't know who's going to read my words, who's going to care that I'm writing a book. So when we figure out why you want to write the book and really get connected to that emotional outcome of who you want to serve and how you want to make a difference by writing that book, then the how part figures itself out. Right?
So,
you don't need to know how, you just need to know why.
And I'll just ask my own personal question I've thought about it, but I think of I have like a chapter, maybe a few pages worth of knowledge to share. I can never imagine writing 100, 200 pages worth of stuff. I'm always how did J.K. Rowling write that many pages is really what comes to me. What do you tell someone like myself? I just don't know if I have enough for a book.
Well, chances are you absolutely have enough for a book, because if you were to really sit down and examine, first of all, exactly what you want to share with other people, right? So maybe it's not actually, if we were to have a conversation about it, we would maybe discover that what you want to write a book about that you're saying you don't have enough content to write is probably only just maybe the introduction of what your book would really be about. So there's some mentorship that we do together to really figure out what your book is going to be about. Because a lot of the time when you start, it doesn't end up the way it started. So I look at book writing is probably a lot more intuitive and grassroots than other people. I'm not one of those write a book in a weekend people. I really want to get into what it is that you really want to share with people. So we would talk about that particular issue if you don't know if you have enough content. Books are written in a lot of different ways. Some people give workshops for years and they say, I'd really like to write a book, but I don't know what I would actually write. People can go back into their workshops and take content and repurpose the content and rewrite it in a way that is very clean and clear for the reader. So chances are you have a wealth of experience. And if we could pinpoint exactly what the end result would be, what the takeaway the reader would have, I'm pretty sure we could come up with some content.
And have you? Where's my book? There you go. Sorry. And is it your premise that everybody has a book in them? Do we all have stories? Do you think anyone can do it?
I think we all have a story to tell. I won't go as far as to say that everybody is talented as far as putting words to paper. And that's what editors and ghostwriters, and there are people that can help with that particular part. Because, if somebody said to me, Carolyn, I want you to be a mathematician for the day, I would say that's just not my thing, but I'm sure somebody could help me do that for a day. There are people to help with that particular process. But yeah, I think people have a story, and more so if you've ever heard that voice, not the crazy voice, but the little voice that says, you really should write a book, or your brother-in-law or somebody at a meeting or at a conference, or somebody at some point has said, you really should write a book. And that idea starts to take its own kind of a life of its own. It's only really a matter of time, because, when you know that there's a book in you, and most people that come and talk to me are those that have said, I don't know how I'm going to do it. I have no idea what I'm doing. I just know I have to write a book. Can you help me with that? Right? And then we start kind of really peeling back all the layers of what exactly is the message. What's the mission? What's the message? What do you want to say? And how can you turn your wisdom that you have into words? There's a lot of people in the industry now that have been in corporate for 20, 30, 40 years, and they're saying, okay, I'm going to retire in my 50s. Now I'd like to write a book. So there's no better time to write a book and to be able to take what you've learned and all your experience and translate that into wisdom for people that, could certainly benefit.
And So let's just say someone has that. They have that. They got that bug, and they're like, I got a story here, and it's there. What are like a couple first steps that you think people could get going just to kind of build momentum in terms of getting their story out there and writing that book?
So what I call is a brain dump, right? So instead of what people tend to do is they sit down to a blank page and they say, well, they presume they have to write it really well. They presume it has to be in book form. Okay, I'm going to sit down today and I'm going to start writing my book. You can do that if you want, but I'm a big proponent for keeping notepads or Evernote on your phone. Ideas are going to come to you throughout your day. If you've made that decision, that commitment, you said, you know what, by such and such a date, I'm determined I'm going to write a book. You'll be amazed at how the universe sends you your content when you least expect it. So keep a notepad. Evernote is an app that's tremendously helpful for writers to be able to capture ideas as they come in. I've had a notepad on my night table since I was a kid. Those are things that you'll be amazed later on. They seem like random thoughts that are coming through your head, but it's actually content that's coming to you in bits and pieces that you're going to, it's like a giant puzzle, like a jigsaw puzzle. You put out 5,000 pieces on the table and slowly you get, the framework done. And then you start putting pieces in that you can recognize. And slowly it may not look like anything at the beginning. And the other thing is once you do start transposing notes or dictating, dictating your notes to yourself on your ideas, is to not judge it and not to edit it and say, oh, okay, I don't really want, doesn't matter what it looks like right now. Just write. Right? That's the way to write a book, is to actually sit down and write and to not give yourself any reason to not write. Just allow the thoughts to come out, put them on paper, don't edit, don't try to organize it, don't put it into chapters. None of that matters at the beginning. What matters is you get that stuff that's in your head out, because the more you do that, the more momentum you will feel, and you won't feel that what people call writer's block, I'm stuck. You're actually not. You're just not taking action and you're not doing. It's called more writer's non-doer, right? So just go and sit down and write. Okay. And then it all starts to make sense down the road. And you'll feel really good when you start putting things down on paper without judgment.
Got and what have you seen, like what's been the benefit to people as they get their story out, as they go through this process, as they go from, just taking a few notes or have an idea and then taking a few notes on Evernote to writing it down? Because you're really describing a journey. Like, this is not a get it done today. It's a whole, it sounds like an entire process. And beyond the obviously the end result of producing this book and having this thing out there, what would you say is like the real benefits to the people that you see? Or like, how do they grow and how do they expand? Because I imagine it must be this awesome experience for them.
It's a life changer for sure. There's no question about it. There's a certain amount of, whether you're just writing the book for your own life experience, whether you've experienced something that you want to write about, or, in self-help, or if it's a business experience or whatnot. I think what a lot of authors learn is that, yes, it is a journey. And a lot of writers think that the one who's going to be taking the big journey is the reader when they're reading, your final manuscript when it comes out as a book. But it's actually the author that takes the bigger journey, because there's a transformational process that happens, because you have to deal with a lot of emotions throughout that process. You have to deal with fear. You have to deal with vulnerability. That's a big key piece where you're now sharing your story, what I call gifting it. You're gifting your story to complete strangers, and you're gifting it in a way that puts you in a position to have to share your own vulnerabilities with people that you don't even know. And that's a very scary thing. So, by sharing your vulnerabilities, you're doing what every author must do to connect with the reader. Okay. If you don't share any of your struggle, if you don't share what you learned from the experience or some of the painful part, and that's hard to write about sometimes, that's the part that your reader connects with you. And when they read that you went through this and this and this just like them, and this is how you solved it, and this is how you came through the other side, that's the piece of value that you're giving, that you're gifting, where your reader is going, oh my gosh, I'm so glad somebody else went through this. And wow, if they can do it, I can do it too. That's the gift. And that's the journey that you take as a writer.
Well, it also, it sounds like you must have to embrace, the places where you've maybe struggled, or where you have, or you as the author, excuse me, have struggled, or even failed, or, obviously didn't work out the way you wanted them to, but to be able to embrace that and say, hey, this has actually been a growing experience. Because it's so easy to look back at things and say, I do not want to talk about that anymore. That's a bad moment in my life. That's where I really, that's not where I was at my best self. But, and I imagine writing all of that, you must have to come to the point where you accept and appreciate you and your life, and like the good and the bad and the ugly, but you're like, this is me and this is what I got.
Yeah, there's no question. And I believe from an intuitive level that we're called to write because it's the lessons that we're meant to learn from those circumstances and those experiences that have come into our life. So, if we haven't dealt with grief particularly well, for example, and we're called to write a book that's going to, and I speak with personal experience, and you're called to write a book and you're including that in the book, it's your opportunity now for your own growth, to work through a particular piece that you may not have, and you may have just put it aside, and it's really for you to move forward in your life. This is opportunity for you to grow. And the more we put things off and the more that we don't deal with them, we're just tempted to repeat the same patterns over and over again. So I believe that writers are called to write books, expressing their own vulnerabilities and their own struggles, because it's time that they need to deal with particular lessons. And by sharing them and helping other people, that's how we help ourselves too. Right.
So you're kind of saying, like, if I, as like, a potential author, if I've had a lot of problems where things I haven't gone as well, that might be good fodder for things to share.
Absolutely. And a lot of the authors that I've been working with in the last year and a half, they've embraced some pretty traumatic subject matter. And I honor them because it's not an easy journey, but they felt that the journey, not only, they weren't looking at, okay, how do I benefit from writing this book? They were all looking past that. How can I be of service to other people? How can I bring value into the life of somebody else? And so when it's bigger than you, when it's not about you and your pain and your struggle, when you have to go through the recounting of it, the reliving of it, and the writing about it, because it's for the greater good, it pushes you forward.
So that's really interesting. So would you say, because, the idea of writing a book is such a lonely, solitary process, as you mentioned it, but would you say that getting to the point of, like, I am here to offer something, I am here to share something with other people, as to get beyond myself, to go to the greater good, that sounds like really important and very powerful in so many different ways.
Yeah, and that's where you can really sit. That's where we discover your why. Sometimes people think, oh, I'm writing a book because, I have this new concept, and like when you were saying you don't feel you would have enough content. If we were to dig a little deeper, we would find out what your why is and what is the exact material that would best serve to be able to achieve that. So when that reader picks up your book, what do you want them to take away? What do you want them to learn, and how can you effectively teach it? So yeah, that's the bigger piece, is figuring out why. And then the how, what we created was, like, we're shepherds. We said, people are sitting in front of their computer saying, okay, that's great. So now I have a book. Now I have what I think is a manuscript, a whole bunch of words on paper. I don't know, 30,000 words. And I've put some chapters to it. And I've created a table of contents, and that's good. And it's now what, right? What do I do now? Who do I go to? How do I get it edited? And how am I going to get this thing looking great? And how do I sell it? And where do I go to promote it? And who's going to create a cover? And there's got to be 1,000 details that go through your head. So if you don't have anyone specifically to guide that journey, a lot of the time what happens is people go, never mind, I'll think about it another day, right? And that book doesn't get published, and it stays in a file in your computer, or one that I've seen recently was in, old school printed spiral binding in a box. And all of a sudden they said, I think it's time I take this book out and let's pay attention to it now. It's been bothering me sitting in that box. I think it's time to write it. So it's allowing people the guidance and giving them the tools they need. Yeah.
Well, awesome. Well, your program sounds amazing, and we'll put a link down below. But just for people, real quick, how can they get in touch with you? They have a book. What can they do to to work with you?
On my website, which is myname.com, carolynflower.com, on the homepage, there's a piece of value there. It's called "What's Holding You Back: The 10 Common Limiting Beliefs that most writers feel when they're writing the book." And they're free to go and just go to my homepage and download it. And they may see themselves in there because they're the ones that seem to come up the most often. They came up for me. They come up for all authors I've worked with, and it's how we can work through that, work past it, and to carve out that piece of sculpture that is going to be your book one day, and get you to that exciting place where the book arrives and your name's on it and you've done it and you've accomplished that great accomplishment. So, carolynflower.com, and if you download that piece of value there is information in there. There's plenty to learn about. And on any one of those pages, you can click on it and you can book a free clarity consult with me and we can have a chat.
Awesome.
Easy.
Awesome. That sounds great. And I'm sure I just have to ask, I met so many people. I know you feel like alone, like my issue is this or my issue is that. Do you find that most people fit well within one of your 10?
Oh yeah, absolutely. They feel alone, and a lot of people don't realize that fear is kind of lingering in the background. It's disguised as a lot of different things. It's disguised as procrastination. It's disguised as I don't have enough time, or I can't afford it, or I don't know who to talk to. It's disguised in a lot of ways, but it all comes down to fear. And so I address that, and I have different exercises that I do with my authors to overcome some of those self-imposed barriers, and they're very real. To do what it is that you want to accomplish. We want you to publish your book.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Well, that sounds great. And as always, on with my next step interviews, I always ask about the word of the day. And today we chose appreciation, which is one of my most favorite words. And so what I ask is, where in your life have you been appreciative or have shown appreciation?
Well, appreciation, gratitude and appreciation are the fabric of a lot of the foundation of what I've done in my business and in my personal life. In my personal life, we have an extended blended family, and we retired a marriage after 20 years. And I have the most appreciation for the fact that we collaborated our life so that our 3 children have lived a respectful, loving environment. So I think I'm probably most appreciative that that big part of our life is in the place that it's in. So.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. My parents did that too, and that was a huge gift to us. That it wasn't ugly or fat. It was great. I highly acknowledge that. And who in your life exudes appreciation? Who's that person that just you're like, they show appreciation a lot?
Well, it's family again. It's family. It's my kids and my mentors. I tend to move towards magnet mentors that not only show appreciation for other people regularly, and I feel appreciated by having the opportunity to work with them, but that teach us all how to appreciate ourselves. I I think we underappreciate ourselves. So I always I'm very grateful for anybody who is in my life that teaches me how to appreciate and value what I bring to the table a little bit more.
And just one thing, I always push my guests a little bit on that. Is there anybody specifically that you could give a shout out to for doing, being awesome?
I probably, if I were to go into my past, it would be a teacher that appreciated me as a kid, who basically taught me that I was a writer, and I was a kid. I was 9, and probably in my life now is my husband, who's my biggest cheerleader. So
that's awesome. Well, please let them know from us. And lastly, so if you're really, bringing a lot of appreciation to your work and to your energies, what is something that you could do in the next day or so to further something that's important to you?
I think probably the thing that I do that is best served to the linked is gratitude and writing gratitudes. It's a practice I've had daily for a few years. I like a conscious practice, but I wrote a book about gratitude, so it is near and dear to me. But I find that when I focus every morning, and that's how I start my day, I end my day. But when I focus every morning on what am I grateful for, and at the end of the day, what was the best part of my day, I find that whatever I appreciate is appreciated, and so that changes a mindset in a second. Because you can't be appreciative and have any of the lower, the lower emotional set at the same time. So if I want to get myself in a positive state, in a creative state, which is where I need to be to best serve, then gratitude's at the top of the list. So writing gratitude, focusing on what works, and that feeling of joy. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's great. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate this.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Any last words that you'd like to share with the audience, for those people with that itch in the back of their head going, I think I got a book somewhere?
Just write it down. Just write down whatever it is, and don't eliminate. A lot of people say, okay, I'm just not going to write it down. Write it down. Sometimes it's obscure, sometimes it's random, but most of the time it's part of a book that you don't maybe even know that you're writing yet. So if you have that little voice that has ever said to you, you really should write a book. Pay attention when the ideas come, or when thoughts come, or inspiration. It's guided inspiration, and write things down, and then start, putting it together slowly. There's no timeline, right? There's no cutoff date. People write books for years. Some of the most prolific authors took 10, 15 years to write books. So there is no timeline. But if you're serious about it, and if you have any questions, certainly I'm happy to answer them. But just write stuff down, and you'll be amazed at what you'll create.
Awesome. We're going here. Awesome. Thank you so very much. So I really appreciate it. So if you will hold on for a second, I'm going to wrap up with the audience here, and then I'll get right back to you.
Super.
Thank you. Okay, everybody. Hey, so I hope that inspires you. I hope that gives you a little idea. If you have an inkling for a book, sounds like you start writing it down. You start taking those baby steps, as I always say with my training. It's all about taking the next step, the next step, the next step. And if you get to a point where you're like, hey, I think I have an idea, but I need some support, definitely call Carolyn. I can tell you that she's great. She's just a genuine person. Hope you can really see that in the interview, and that she'll help you, move that idea from, that thing from idea to holding it in your hand. So thank you. Let's see, tomorrow, 9:30 a.m., I'm talking to Kala Shaw, who has literally taken a passion of hers and ideas of hers to help children and show her kids how to embrace caring and loving for other people. And she now is working with thousands of kids all over Northern California. This is awesome. We're having a conversation about how to change your passion into a second career. So I hope you can join us. Please, if you like this interview, especially if you're watching this later, like it, share it, do all that kind of stuff, because I just want to do as many of these as possible, and your support really helps. Thank you, and I will see you later. Bye.